Hi, Pena. How are you doing, man?
I'm alright. I'm alright. I'm good. Thank you, Itumeleng. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Can't complain. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, who's Pena? Where did you grow up? Things like that.
Okay, cool. So I think first and foremost, my name Phenyo Shabangu. I grew up in Pretoria. I was born in a township called Garankuwa, and then I grew up in a township called Soshanguve. Spent most of my life there, primary school, high school, varsity. My family moved out of Soshanguve to the east of Pretoria in like 2010, and now we reside in the east of Pretoria. So I'm a thoroughbred Pretoria boy. I went to high school in Potchefstroom though. I went to Potchefstroom Boys High, so I was in boarding school for 5 years. But other than that, I'm a thoroughbred Pretoria boy. Eh?
Sure. No, that's cool. Hopefully, we'll hear some of the tutorial lingo later on. So tell me something. So did you know what you wanted to study? Because I heard you talk about varsity. Did you know when you finished school what you wanted to study and what was it?
No, I didn't know what I want to study. I had an idea. No, 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 no. So let me take a step back. Um, I knew what I wanted to study when I started studying in varsity, but it's obviously not, well, not obviously, it's not the career that I'm doing right now. I think when I was in high school, I was fortunate. We were fortunate to have like teachers that actually took the time to do these psychometric tests and do these personality tests and take us to the university. Like I said, I was in high school in Potchefstroom, so the university is not that far from our high school. So we had the opportunity to go to that university and do a series of, well, a battery of personality tests to just try and understand, what it is that you like and that what it is that you'd like to study. So I kind of like leveraged off that. And from those personality tests, they really pointed me out as an individual that was very outgoing, very people's orientated person, someone that was really, really in touch with society, sensitized to what's happening in society, and someone that had a really commercial mind. So after matric, that's when I decided to study marketing management. I actually started, my first degree was a BCom in marketing management. And I just felt that as a discipline, it resonated to everything about my personality trait. There's a bit of commercial, there's a bit of creativity there. It's a people orientated kind of profession and business. And obviously, when I got to varsity and I got to explore a lot of more modules and subjects within the commerce field, I really, really got to understand what it is that I really liked. And that's how I ended up doing what I end up now. But I think the long and short of it is from matric, I knew what I wanted to study. I was confident that what I wanted to study was the right choice. But I'm also grateful that while I was studying what I was studying, I was exposed to other modules and other areas of learning that kind of like really allowed me to find that sweet spot of what I wanted to do with my career going forward.
Okay. So is it a fair assumption that since you did your boarding school in Port, you studied at Northwest University? That's the only closest one I know.
No, I would never do that to myself. Imagine 5 years in sport plus. No, I actually studied at the University of Johannesburg. I studied at UJ. Did my undergrad
Okay.
there. I did my honors degree there, and then I recently completed my master's degree this year through the University of Pretoria. So I've studied in Gauteng mostly.
Okay, fantastic. So you spoke about studying a marketing, but you're becoming marketing. Did you pursue your masters in the same field?
So what happened is when I was studying in undergrad, so at UJ, when you study marketing management, you do supply chain and logistics as a second major. So what happened is in second year, we took supply chain and logistics as a second major right through our third year. And I think once I started getting exposed to that area of learning and that area of commerce, I really grew fond of it. Then what I did is I sent out like a series of emails, just to companies saying that I wanted vacation work, I wanted some exposure. I even went as far as saying that they didn't need to pay me, they just needed to give me a letter that said that, listen, this guy, he did an internship at our company. This is what he did. And these are the tasks that he did. This is really what I was looking for. And it must have been on a letterhead, just so that on my CV, it could really show that I had that kind of exposure and experience. So I think in my third year, that's when I decided to pursue these internships. And I was fortunate enough to get an internship, a logistics and supply chain internship with the BMW plant in Roslyn in Pretoria. And I worked there during the December vacation into my honors year. So at the time, I had already decided that I hadn't decided yet. At the time, I had applied to do my honors degree in either marketing or in supply chain. And once I got that exposure to supply chain, it really kind of like confirmed everything, and it confirmed my gut feel that I really enjoy this kind of stuff, And I think what I really liked about supply chain is that it sounds very weird, but then it's like a sweet spot between commerce and engineering, and there's a bit of creativity there as well, So I think that's what I really, really liked most about it. And and then after my internship, then I pursued my honors degree in logistics and supply chain, and I've just completed my master's now in supply chain. So my master's was in supply chain at the University of Pretoria.
Awesome. So you did a bit of an internship leading into your honors. You now finished your master's. At what point did you join the working environment? Or I'm actually assuming that you are working. You could be an entrepreneur.
I wish. I aspire to be one. So I started. Then after my internship at BMW, I started my honors degree, which was just a year. That was during the year of 2010. After my honors degree, I got employed by SAB Miller. Then I worked at SAB as a supply chain graduate. I did some demand planning, some capacity planning. I did some procurement. I did some production planning. They really tried to expose us to all areas of supply chain within their business. After that program, then I was placed at the Shamdor depot in Krugersdorp. Then I was working in warehousing and distribution there, and that was I think it had a challenge of its own. It's another kind of environment, and it's also kind of like it's very real. It's different to when you're working at central office or at the head office and you're doing the demand plans and you're working with the forecasts versus working at the actual depot dispatching the trucks, having this customer that owns a tavern complain to you that the delivery hasn't arrived yet, so it's different kinds of exposure and it's different kinds of ways to learn how to deal with people. So that's an area of my life where I really believe I grew a thick skin, because you can imagine tavern owners, they swear at you, when they want their delivery, they want it. And they don't care, and then I spent a year and a half at SAB. During my honors year, I was fortunate enough to get employment offers from 5 companies, right? And from those companies, I chose SAB. And I think for me, what really helped me a lot was the fact that I sent out all these emails to these companies. I asked to do an internship, even though they didn't pay me. And they could see from my academic record, that this guy's actually a solid candidate. So I don't understand why we wouldn't afford him this opportunity. And I think on my CV, and even when I was going through these interviews in my honors year, a lot of the questions that were centered around my internship and what I did at BMW and my involvement there. So you could tell that there was an interest. It piqued their interest, the kind of experience that I had merely being a student, because the reality was that I was just a student, and for me to be able to kind of like speak a language of a supply chain professional, someone that's been exposed to the industry. I know how things work, although I don't know them fully. And although we do appreciate that I was an intern, but I kind of like had a grasp, and that's what really intrigued them. So I was fortunate enough to get all these job offers, but from those job offers, SAB was one of them, and this other one company called Volition. It was Volition at the time. Now it goes by Resolve Solution Partners. It's bought by Imperial Logistics. They do like supply chain consulting for the Imperial Logistics Group. So they gave me a job offer at the time, but then I obviously chose SAB. So after a year and a half at SAB, I just felt that it was becoming very routine, like, the work, and I wasn't really enjoying it anymore. I felt that I had kind of like learned as much as I could in that particular environment. And then I really got to understand, and I really did a lot of searching. What is it that I really wanted to do? Because the last thing I wanted to find myself in is switching from another job to another job just to be unhappy, and to find myself switching to another job again. So I had to kind of like find the root of what it is that speaks to my passion. And if I'm going to be stuck in corporate, and if I'm going to be stuck working in like corporate South Africa, it might as well be worth my while. And that's when I realized that, doing project kind of work, doing consulting kind of work, it really, really spoke to me, because during those interview stages, they kind of like obviously laid the land of the business and how the business operates and what they do. And it kind of like really, at the time, I didn't choose them because SAB had the best offer. They offered me a lot of money. I was young, stupid, and naive. I was a student. They had a lot of benefits. They were giving us free alcohol, and that's my level of thinking at the time. And when I came to my senses, and I was just like, you know what, Phenyo, you actually really need to understand what it is you want to do, because you're going to be doing this for a while. So it may as well be worth your while. And that's when I decided that, I think I really like this consulting thing. I really like project-based work. What I found is I don't like being in a role and doing the same thing day in and day out. So I like different kinds of challenges on different days, so no one day must be the same. So because these guys made me an offer when I was still a graduate, I reached out to them again. And I was like, listen, I'm still interested. I know I didn't take your offer, but if you're keen to have a conversation, we can have a conversation. And they were keen to have a conversation. So I had a conversation with them, and they made me an offer. It was obviously a lateral move from SAB, because I was going into another kind of industry, another kind of environment. And I think for me, it was the best thing I actually did for myself in my career. Moving to a consulting environment, although at the time it wasn't one of the bigger consulting firms, but the nature of the work, was synonymous to what you'd find in a management consulting kind of company. Then that's basically it. So then I was in SAB, moved to Resolve Solution Partners, did a lot of project work within supply chain still. So I'm really, really like a supply chain professional. So I do like end-to-end supply chain advisory kind of work. So I've done a lot of like distribution optimization, warehouse optimization. I've done some inventory modeling. I've done some sales and operations planning, and I've done some procurement, strategic sourcing, doing category strategies, supply localization. So I've really, really kind of like been exposed to the full spectrum of supply chain. And that's what I really like about the consulting environment, is that every client has a unique problem as far as the supply chain is concerned. So the rate at which you learn and your level of learning is so amplified, and you really, really forced, and you put in a corner to really kind of like fix a client's problem, even though you don't even know and you've never really been in touch with this specific phenomenon. You're going to become a guru overnight. You're going to read all you can. You can expose yourself to as many projects that were similar, the methodologies, what was done, how they run the models and all that stuff. And then you're going to go back to the client and you're going to be like, hey, client, this is how I think we should diagnose your problem. This is how I think we should approach fixing it. And this is the value that we're going to add. This is the cost savings that we're going to anticipate, and I think we should go about this way. And that's the kind of environment that really intrigues me. So when I was at Resolve, that's the kind of work that I did there, and I stayed there for like 2 years, and then I moved. And my reason for moving was, at the time, I wanted to get exposed, because I was in a consulting environment. I wanted to move to a bigger consulting firm.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to get exposed to other kinds of projects outside of supply chain. So I always say in my LinkedIn bio and in my introductory sentences to my cover note that I consider myself as a well-rounded business professional, but with supply chain at its core. I believe that supply chain is a discipline that cuts across all industries, and it's very important. It should carry a strategic component, and it should be on the strategic mandate of every organization. So I wanted to move to Deloitte. I moved to Deloitte, and I wanted to move to a bigger consulting firm because of the kind of projects that they did there. Not only do they do supply chain kind of projects, but they do market entry, they do operating model design, they do cost optimizations, and really, really cool and interesting stuff. And they also do supply chain consulting as well, so I could be in those companies. I could be a specialist in supply chain, but I could be open to learning about other areas of consulting, and that's why I think it was very good for me to move to Deloitte at the time. And at the time I was exposed, and that's when I really started being exposed to a lot of projects within the government supply chain as well. I learned to learn a lot about procurement and demand management from a government point of view, how they administer tenders, how they go out on tenders, not really how me as a respondent would receive the tender, but then like inside the actual entity, how they would draft the specs, the checks and balances that come into play, and how you'd evaluate this thing and how you take it to certain committees to get approved, especially if it's a high value tender. I got to work with tenders that are like 125 million, sourcing products, sourcing services, So I really learned the intricacies of sourcing from a supply chain point of view in government, So some of these things I really do understand, like some of these issues that we face as a country, why service delivery like this and why we're going through XYZ. Some of them I really do understand, but a lot of them are really unacceptable, especially if you think of the process. And I'd like to believe that I'm very well versed in this process, and I've really been exposed to this kind of stuff. And then after Deloitte, I've kind of like pretty much stayed in consulting. I've worked at Accenture. Right now, I'm working at EY. I work in supply chain advisory. I work as a manager, so I'm a project manager. So I manage these projects, and I think now I'm at a point in my career where I'm carving out my niche. So I think in my 20s, so I'm only 32 now. In my 20s, I really spent a lot of that time exposing myself as much as I could to every area and every facet of supply chain management as I could, to really know what I'm talking about, especially like just supply chain end to end, even like things like manufacturing excellence within supply chain, overall equipment effectiveness, the really, really technical aspects of supply chain. I really wanted to expose myself to that. And now I've done that. And I'd like to believe that I'm really, really well versed in supply chain management. When I was doing my master's degree as well, it also helped me to get further well-versed in it because I did it by dissertation. So it was a full research master's. And I wrote on supply chain integration in FMCG manufacturing firms, how FMCG. So I wrote on how supply chain professionals that work in FMCG manufacturing firms, how they perceive the construct of supply chain integration. So supply chain integration is widely practiced in first world countries, integrating their supply chains with their upstream suppliers and their downstream customers, integrating systems, integrating processes. So it's one real-time view, So for instance, what would happen in a very, very highly integrated supply chain, if I manufacture Pampers, and to manufacture Pampers, I need this much cotton wool. When I run out of cotton wool to manufacture my Pampers, on the systems of my suppliers, they should be able to see that I'm running out of cotton wool, and they should be able to send a delivery to me. I shouldn't be able to be like, guys, I need a delivery, and all that. And also the same with my customers, on my customers' shelves, especially big customers like Macro, Pick and Pay. If I see that they're running out of Pampers, especially the ones that's 0 to 2 years, if I see that they're hitting reorder point, then I need to send a shipment to them. And that's how integrated supply chain works. It should be more proactive than reactive. So then I wrote my dissertation on that. And as South African professionals in supply chain, how do we perceive this construct? And in order for me to understand how we perceive this construct, I was asking the question, what practices do you guys do in this organization that will suggest that you guys are integrated internally and integrated with your supplier? And they'll be like, no, we communicate effectively, we communicate openly, we've got this one system that is interlinked to their systems, and these are supply chain practices. And I really got to understand what is our state of integration, from a supply chain standpoint in a South African perspective, and the reality is that there's still a lot of work to do, but the FMCG industry is definitely leading the pack when you have to compare it to all other industries, and writing that dissertation has also made me kind of like understand much more technically, much more deeper what supply chain management is about. So now I'm at the point in my career where I'm really carving out my niche. I know the end-to-end supply chain. I've done projects on the end-to-end supply chain. I can diagnose issues along the end-to-end supply chain. Now I need to carve out the niche. I need to carve out a niche and be known for something, be known for one specific thing, in supply chain. And right now at EY, I'm a manager, and I'm a manager within procurement strategy. So that's the niche that I've identified for myself. And I think the reason for me identifying that niche, I think procurement is something that's very close to the CFO agenda. And if it's close to the CFO agenda, it will be close to the CEO agenda. My idea is that in 10 years' time, I want to be a CEO of an organization. I'm working towards becoming a CEO of a big organization, right? So if I'm going to, my conduit into that is through procurement, really knowing sourcing, really understanding how organizations can save costs, how they can cut costs, and really interrogating the various levers across the end-to-end organization, really interrogating those levers that can add value or that kind of like suggest that there's value leakage, how do we fix those? And I think that's the angle that I'm going at. And I think that's my sweet spot. And I think, I'm very comfortable working within that space.
Yeah. It sounds like a very fascinating story. And I like the fact that you've explained what supply chain is and some different aspects of what you did in your career as well. The one part I'm curious about is to then say, what were some of the challenges you've experienced? It sounded like you were a go-getter. You kind of went out and got your internships. You went out and knew which jobs you want to go for, and you got after those companies and got what you want. Now you're carving out your niche, and you know exactly what you're looking for as well because of the experience.
Yeah.
So what has been some of your challenges in this journey that you've been traveling?
So my challenges, I think, were largely, I think in the beginning, my challenges were opportunity, being exposed to the opportunity. I think the reality is that the supply chain fraternity and the supply chain industry as a whole is a very white industry, and I'm going to be very candid about it. It's very seldom that you really find Black professionals within supply chain. Most of the time it's white professionals. And I've also had the privilege of presenting a paper at the SAPEX conference. There's this conference called the SAPEX conference. It's the biggest supply chain conference in the Southern Hemisphere. And I submitted a paper there, and my paper got chosen, and I got to present my paper there. This was in 2016. And even at the conference, it's very white. It's white leaders, white professionals in supply chain. And it's very seldom that you find Black people. And because it's very seldom that you find Black people, the level of exposure that's given to you when you work on these kind of projects is very minimal. Or the kind of work that they'd make you do on these projects was very tedious, So at some point, I really needed to put my foot down, and I needed to be like, guys, I really understand that this is what the lay of the land is like, but I'm actually here to learn much more than what you guys are exposing me to, And I don't think I'd be here if I wasn't capable of learning all this stuff. So I think something's got to give. We need to meet each other halfway. This has to be It has to make sense to me, you know? And I think what's really given me confidence is knowing from the get-go that I am talent. Like, I know I'm talent. Um, and I know that if I don't get what I want in this organization, I can always leave, you know, and someone is going to give me what I want. And I remember when I went to go interview at EY, they said to me, after looking at my resume, they said, we see that you actually move around a lot, you know, like unashamedly, like your CV demonstrates that. And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm like, if you give me tedious work to do, and I was very candid about it. I was like, if you guys give me tedious work to do and the work is not exciting and you put me on these projects where the work is uninspiring, I don't want to lie to you. I'm going to leave. And that's just what it is. And I think sometimes you just really have to be honest, you know. And I think once you really involve yourself in how organizations work, you'll really understand that. I mean, like, I'm not being arrogant or anything, but the reality is that organizations need us more than what we need them, you know. Um,
Yeah.
we obviously, of course, need them for our remuneration and to pay for our lives, you know. But the long and short of it is that if you're talent and you're really good at what you do, these guys really need you, you know.
Yeah.
And I think coming to understand that, I had to go through all these challenges, you know, of really doing work that was unfulfilling within the project environment. Although I knew after doing a lot of exploration that this is the kind of place that I need to be in. So if this is the kind of place I need to be in and I'm not doing this kind of work, something is amiss, and I need to understand what it is. And I think also the other challenge would also be when you're working in consulting and you're a Black professional, especially in supply chain, they tend to allocate you on projects that are government focused. So they'll put you on a lot of government projects, you know, because of the nature of the client. You know, I mean, they're thinking black to black, and they're thinking maybe the white resources can go and work at the cool clients, you know, your AB InBevs, your Tiger Brands, your Samsung, and then maybe Phenyo, they can go to Transnet and Eskom and know the Department of Health, you know. And I found that very challenging. And I found that very challenging. And I think, yeah, then you start being vocal about these things. And I think the the the, the very important thing is to really speak up. And if you really do deliver, I believe if you do deliver, you can get away with anything. If you deliver excellent work, you can get away with anything, and you can really tell people where to get off, you know. And we really, I mean, I don't want to yeah, I don't wanna deviate, but to be very honest, the corporate world is like, it's a jungle, you know, it's a very big jungle. And
Yeah.
really, if you really don't understand what it is that you want from this corporate experience, whether you know you want to work until retirement, but then what does that mean? Do you want to work to become a CEO, or whether you want to work until a level you feel that now you can go into entrepreneurship? But if you really don't understand, well, why you're there, it's very easy for people to use you and misuse you. It's very easy for your leaders to just like get you doing work that's not aligned to your career trajectory, your career plan. And that could be really challenging, you know? At the end of the day, I mean, sometimes I sit with some of my peers and we have honest conversations around growth and what have you done this year, and um, what can you do better? And some of the stories I actually hear them listen when I listen to them. Some of the stories I hear, I'm just like, you know what, this thing you can actually stop it right now, you know. Or sometimes you just like you're not progressing. The same story you told us last year is the same thing you're telling us this year. And it all has to do with the stuff that they have you doing at work, you know? And I'm not going to say it's because you're lazy and because you're not a go-getter. I know you're a go-getter, but there's a discussion you're not having with your leaders at work that finds you in the same place, that finds you circling around the same place. And really, I think as people, especially Black people, we really need to learn to be vocal in the workplace. We really need to learn to tell it like it is. We really need to learn to really express our unhappinesses, you know, whether it be it professionally. Because at the end of the day, now my thing is, if I spend 85% of my year at work, it must be worth my while. I'm not going to be miserable here.
It's a lot of time. I mean, it makes no sense to go there and do things that are
No, no,
weird.
I'm not going to be miserable. I'm sorry. You know,
And I mean, thank you for that, Pino. I mean, you're highlighting critical points around things we take for granted in corporate. And it's a reality, whether you're in the consulting world or in formal corporate or wherever companies that you're in. If you don't take account of your own career, the probability is you'll stagnate and you won't see the progression you're looking for. So
100%.
I like the point that the points that you're making to say, take it on your hands to say, this is not the type of work I'd like to do. It might be grappling work to get me to what I want to do, but it has to be a finite period when I do it. And then soon, if I don't see myself doing what I need to do, I do what you do. Move on, find another space to get to do what you really want to do and grow. Because ultimately you have your own ambitions as well. And you're right, we talent. I mean, it's not often that we take a pause and look at that we know what we're doing, we know what we're talking about, we've learned about it, we've put time in understanding it. And so our content, our knowledge is valuable. So we can't just assume that you're going to come and be a runaround boy
Yeah.
with knowledge. Makes no sense. And so you have to challenge that type of ethos as well.
No, definitely. Definitely. I remember there was this one project. So in the project environment, how it works in consulting, I don't know if you would know, but how it would work is after you finish a specific project, actually you work with a different team.
Yeah.
And then when you're done with this project, your next project, it won't have the same team. So when you finish this one project, you have a conversation with the project manager around your performance.
Yeah.
And then they rate your performance, and then you move on to your next project, and then you have the same thing at the closeout. And then at the end of the performance, at the end of the financial year for your performance review, they take all that feedback and they combine it into one composite score, like how you're scoring. Are you a high performer, or are you doing what you're supposed to, what you're hired for, type thing. And I remember the one time I was working with these two Afrikaans guys. It was at Resolve, and we were doing a distribution optimization.
Yeah.
And these guys, they used to send me stuff, and then I used to do the stuff and send it back to them. But then, like, I'd see them in the office, they're going to a meeting, they're having a meeting, Bali fail. And then they'd come back. And then after the meeting, they'd send me stuff, and then and then along the way, I mean, it was a 12-week project. So along the way, things got lost in translation because there was never that common platform where we all met as a team, you know? And I remember the project manager was actually the managing partner of Resolve. Sometimes, I mean, the managing partner does some work, he wants to. So at the time, the project manager was the managing partner, and we were having and then at your performance review discussion, when they discuss your performance on this project, they always have an independent person in the room, to kind of like facilitate and mediate the conversation.
Sure.
And I remember for that one particular project, I scored the lowest out of all of my projects, and I'm sitting with this guy, he's the managing partner, we're discussing my performance, and he's like to me, this project is a very sore one. Hey, we're not used to you performing like this. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, so I think he expected me to be like, you know what, next time I'll do better. I'll do this, next time I'll just be more involved. Yeah, then I went for him, hey. And I was like, listen, you can't treat me like your post box. You're treating me like your post box. When Ali Ivani, you're having meetings. I find out that you're meeting on weekends and you're doing work. You're configuring models and you're doing exciting stuff. Now you treat me like your post box. You send me Excels, you say clean data, send it back. And then you send me, that's all I'm doing. This whole project, that's all I've been doing. I've been cleaning up Excel sheets and sending them back to you. How on earth am I going to be a high performer if you do that to me?
Yeah.
This is this guy. How on earth am I going to deliver excellence if you treat me like that? How?
Yeah.
And I think at some point we need to learn to have the candid conversations.
Yeah.
At some point, you really need to bite the bullet. At some point, you need to be like, listen, this is what you're doing.
Yes.
And I felt that. And I've also found that it's helped me. It's helped me a lot. And it's helped me with my current leaders that I work with now, the partners that I work with at EY, the project managers that I work with. We have very honest conversations, If the expectation is too high, I tell you, I'm like, listen, this expectation is too high. Once you learn to have that style of conversation, you'll learn to be more happier in your job. Sometimes, I mean, the consulting industry is very intense. It's very, fast paced, high performance. Sometimes they'd send you something and then they'd be like, I want it by this time. And what I've seen with a lot of Black professionals is they take it. They're like, okay. And then they're going to go stress, and then their anxiety is going to peak, knowing that they can't do it by this time. And my thing is, you're not a robot. Go tell this person that, listen, I can't do it by this time. We're thinking the best I can do is Monday.
Yes.
And
that's a true point. And often we are scared because of title. You hear managing partner and you're like, oh my goodness, so I must just bend over backwards and get stuff done. I mean, if you are like at the low end of the value chain in the organization, you always feel like the superiority will always undermine you. So they'll always ask you to do whatever you have to do. So I like the point you're making to say, have those candid conversations and be honest. And I found in my own career as well, where I've actually been open and honest with my line managers, it's been the most happiest roles that I've been in. And I see my growth trajectory has been great. But where you just sit back and you kind of let stuff happen to you, it's disaster. And you become dissatisfied. I mean, like you said, a lot of things peak. You could get stress, you could get all sorts of anxiety issues, and then you have other problems, which, I mean, at a young age that we're in, we shouldn't be worried about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And, I've worked with, whites, Blacks, Indians alike. I've worked with so many people in consulting that will tell you that, what, I'm on antidepressants because of this project. And I'm thinking to myself, it's because you're not having the right conversation with these people. You must have a courageous conversation with this person and tell this person that you can't do this thing, I remember the one time I was working on a project with this other one guy, ex-colleague of ours, Xolani. At the time, we were working with Deloitte. And Xolani didn't have a car. And he stayed in Soweto. And he stayed with his mother, and his mother is disabled. So before he comes to work, he needs to make sure that everything is all right in the house for his mom. And then he comes to work. And we were working with the senior manager, a white lady, privileged, very privileged. And she was like, Xolani was running late. And she was like, if he really wants this job, he would be here.
Yeah.
And then we had to step in. I had to be like, Judy, no, that's not how you do it. This guy is going through X, Y, Z. These are his problems. You don't have those challenges. So that's why you can't sensitize yourself to his reality, And now, because we told her that, she understands. Yeah. Now, when Xolani comes into the office and he apologizes, she'll be like, I understand. It's fine, So I think sometimes, the onus is on us. But also we should look out for each other. I mean, it's a very complex thing, It's a very complex thing.
No, it's very difficult. And just maybe as sort of ideas that you want to share to help. I mean, you've shared quite a number of things that are helpful. Stand up for yourself, be able to speak up, and be as candid as possible where required, so that there's transparency. So if I'm young and I'm looking at you and I'm thinking to myself, but Phenyo, you seem to have had things sort of okay in your world, and courageously so. You are comfortable. You have no issues in approaching people. I grew up in an environment where I call people sir, madam, whatever, and I crumble when it comes to these things. Help me navigate my way through. Or I'm finding myself in a place where I'm dissatisfied with my job. I've been getting 100 declines. I don't even know where to look anymore. What are some of the things that keeps my head high? To still continue, to still pursue, almost courageously, like how you did?
I think so. I think number one, when it comes to being dissatisfied, getting all those declines, it's the approach. And I just feel that sometimes I look at people's CVs. I mean, I go out of my way to look at people's CVs when they apply for jobs, and I really give advice where I can. And my thing is approach. I think the first thing people need to really do, and we don't do it at all, hey, and I think it cuts across all races, research. We need to do research. If you're applying for a specific job, if you're wanting to get into a specific industry, do thorough research. Understand the end-to-end value chain of this industry, number one. Number two, understand how far it can take you. Number three, understand what it takes to get in. So to understand what it takes to get in, look at the caliber of people. Go onto LinkedIn. You know, when you go onto LinkedIn and you want to work, say, in a consulting company, go onto the McKinsey page, go onto the Deloitte consulting page, EY, and look at the caliber of people that are managers and senior associates and senior consultants and consultants at the McKinseys and the EYs and the Deloittes. Go into their LinkedIn profiles and understand what did this person study? How does this person frame their story? Look at their bio. What added courses that this person do to get to where they got to? And if you feel brave enough or if you're confident enough, shoot this person a LinkedIn message and be like, listen, I came across your profile. I'm very interested. And if you'd like, if I would like to have a chat and maybe, have a conversation around your career and all that stuff. And then from there, piece all that information, understand resumes, and understand how should you put your resume together. And the resume part is the part that irritates me the most, because we're not living in the era where your CV has to name Phenyo, say name Shabangu, driver's license code 8, language English, Setswana, Zulu, Ing. We don't do that anymore, So understand the trends. What are the trends? How are people formulating their CVs? How are people building their brands out there? And then bring it back to your life, and then make your CV that way. Make your CV look that way. Have a crisp and powerful introductory cover note. Speak about yourself, your strengths, your skills, where you've been, and your studies. Speak about all of your capabilities. Put them on a matrix. Say powerful things about your job and your job roles. Like, don't just put consultant at Deloitte, process mapping and blah, 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 blah. And I mean, that is what consultants do. So you're not telling me anything. Put the consultant at Deloitte built an analytic tool for a client that cut costs by 25%. Yes. Now you're telling me a story, led an initiative within the organization that saw us building our sales pipeline by 5 million. You're telling me a story. You're not telling me the regular stuff that consultants do. You're telling me how you added value. Yeah. And I think that's what people really need to start thinking about. They need to start thinking about, there's a difference between me giving you a whole lot of information and me trying to be informative about myself. I can give you a lot of information about how I was this consultant. I did all this process mapping. I can work this Excel. That's what consultants are supposed to do. Yeah. I don't expect anything less from a consultant. I can do report writing. I expect you to write the best report on the face of this earth because you're a consultant and you've worked in a management consulting firm. But what value are you going to add? What are you going to do differently? And how are you going to demonstrate that value to us? And that's what people really need to start thinking about. And that's what people, that's how they should start framing their stories, Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for that, Phenyo. I think you've shared a lot of valuable information. And I like the last parts more specifically because you're right. All the CVs that a lot of people do, it's just exactly that. Name, surname, license code. And you're like, okay, but what are you saying about yourself? When you get to the crux of the work they've done, again, it's just literally step by step what the role profile said in that previous. Nothing about what you did, which is not the problem. So I like that advice. It's absolutely critical, and you've given good examples of how to articulate yourself better there. Any closing thoughts from your side? Final words to sort of close the conversation.
Closing final words from my side. I think, let's see, where can I start? I want to start from a career aspect. I think the world is going through a trajectory, or it's moving in a direction of data and science. I think the world is moving towards a direction of analytics. I think these resources, and for us as individuals to capacitate ourselves and upskill ourselves to come to the same level and to be able to compete at that level, those resources are widely available. You don't have to go to university for it. You don't have to do a degree for it. I think it's very important that young people and people that are going into corporate and people that are in corporate today, that they learn the fundamentals of data analytics, data science, that they learn how to code, even if it's just the basic stuff. I think the world is really starting to explore the possibilities and the full strength of artificial intelligence and blockchain. And I've really seen examples of that. And I think in closing, what I would like to say is that people should really, really ride this wave.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of jobs that are going to emanate from a data intensive kind of environment. And you would really, really be disappointed if you're not ready.
Yeah. Definitely. Sure. Nice, powerful words to close with. Thank you so much. This is why I like chatting to management consultants. You always throw in the future in there.
Oh, I already know. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Tumiling. I really appreciate it.
As well. I appreciate your time and having a conversation with us.
Absolutely. Likewise.
Cool, sir. Thanks, Phenyo.
Sharp, sharp.
Yeah.